Welcome to the News Review. Iran's foreign minister has called on the country's neighbors to cooperate in achieving common interests following Donald Trump's defeat in the US presidential election. In a tweet in Arabic, Mohammed Zarif stated that, quote, betting on foreigners does not bring security and disappoints. Zarif described dialogue as the only way to end differences and tensions. Iran's top diplomats called on regional countries to build a better future together. Tehran has time and again reiterated its adherence to good neighborly relations with the countries in the region. It has also expressed willingness to engage in negotiations to bridge the existing gaps with its neighbors. Joining us is David Yaghoubian, a professor of history, and we also have Saeb Shaath, an author and Middle East affairs expert. Gentlemen, welcome. Professor Yaghoubian, if I can kick it off with you. Iran, what do you make of Iran's statements in general, and in particular Mohammed Zarif's, the foreign minister's comment that regarding Iran's neighbors, betting on foreigners does not bring security and disappoints at the same time?
Well, I think Zarif is really echoing comments that he, as well as President Rouhani, have been making really for several years now, but especially since about a year ago, October of 2019, when the Rouhani administration put forward the HOPE initiative, the Hormuz Peace Endeavor, which it really attempts to create a system of security and dialogue, especially within the Persian Gulf and regionally within the Middle East, that is based on common principles of dialogue, anti-intervention, recognition of sovereignty, of territory, the invariability of international borders, et cetera. And so I think now we have an opportunity to move away from the conflict and tension that has really characterized especially the last year, but really the last several years, particularly difficult under the Trump regime. And so I believe Zarif's speech is putting forward the call once again for regional dialogue and expressing one of his primary points that he makes time and time again and expounded on in his lectures at Tehran University, that security cannot be purchased from outside, and that foreigners will never be able to provide the indigenous peoples of Southwest Asia, or really the indigenous peoples or locals, if you will, anywhere around the world with security. They must create the security with their neighbors, for after all, it is going to be the indigenous peoples of the world where they exist and their neighbors who are ultimately going to have to deal with one another when the United States empire is no longer there to stir the pot and to purposefully direct and guide nations to work against each other's interests and in the interests of the United States.
Right. Mr. Shaath, are Iran's neighbors too dependent on America, and do they need to rely on Washington so much?
It's, if you notice, when the Zionist entities, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Saudi Prince Mohammed bin Salman, they kept silence about Biden's winning, and they still maybe, God knows, waiting maybe a miracle happens for Trump to be re-elected again. We can recall Netanyahu's and Kushner's plan, which they believed in and relied actually on Trump's victory for the second term, and will be followed by Netanyahu's victory as well in the Zionist entities election. And then they bring a massive amount of Arabic countries, normalizations, its ties with the Zionist entity, even Islamic countries. But it didn't occur to the planners, the genius of Kushner and Netanyahu, that Trump will be the only president in the last 3 decades not to be elected to serve a second term. And to do away with their plans, I think Biden will revive 2 issues, I think, in here. They were a part of the sort of dealing and wheeling within the Democratic Party nomination process between the progressive side and the liberals. One of them would be reviving the nuclear agreement with Iran, since it was an Obama's Biden administration's achievement. And they want to do that in a way which will avoid any clash with the Zionist entity itself or its lobbies. How they're going to do that? They can configure something. Joe Biden want to rejoin then the agreement and to adopt Obama's as well approach toward two-state solution with the regarding the Palestinian issue. All of that maybe demonstrate as a blow to this big plan, which is Kushner and Netanyahu have to create the Zionist entity in the region as a pivotal state, would have Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states will be its satellite, and then under one sort of object to get these states to face Iran and to create Iran as their real enemy. If Biden rejoined the agreement, which I believe will, he does not want to do that, since the Democrats want to focus on the issues at hand. COVID-19, as they created a team right now to deal with it, the Democrats under, of course, Biden administration, and jump starting the economy as well. So the Democrats and Joe Biden's administration doesn't have a dime to waste on the Netanyahu's dreams. This is the new sort of way you're going to see in the region.
Right. And let me just get the professor back in for the 1 or 2 minutes that we have left. Professor Yaghoubian, not the first time Iran has extended its hand to its neighbors, the Persian Gulf monarchies in the region. They did so before Trump, and they're doing it now after Trump. Do you think its neighbors will respond in kind with a view to bringing peace and security in the region?
I think that now there is the opportunity for them to rethink their reliance on the United States and U.S. military protection in the context of the Hormuz peace endeavor and this new opportunity to actually create peace and security. And I think it's very important, in echoing the comments of my colleague related to your last question, several decades, let's say at least the last 30 years of intensive arms purchases in the hundreds of billions of dollars and close cooperation with the United States has not bought Saudi Arabia any security. This is evidenced by, for example, Lindsey Graham's comments that the Saudis, as he said, wouldn't last 2 weeks and would be speaking Farsi without the United States. And as well, if you think about the very disparaging and offensive way that President Trump himself has referred to the Saudis and Gulf states, essentially as a milk cow, a cow to be milked by the United States and its military industrial complex, and yet leaving them essentially without the ability to defend their own territory. And so hopefully they will take into account, especially the last several years of their relationship with the United States and the massive disrespect as well as the losses to their own economies and to their own peoples through the purchase of billions of dollars of arms that are not going to suit their security or their economic interests. So I'm truly hopeful that we now have the opportunity for them to rethink their policy towards Iran and to potentially embrace the hope endeavor.
Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. Very interesting points raised there. I'm afraid we have run out of time. Let me thank our guest, David Yaghoubian, a professor of history from San Bernardino, and also Saeb Shaath, author and Middle East affairs expert, joining us out of Belfast.